I started at A&M in 1979 as a freshman. I was in the Aggie band all 4 years, and it was a wonderful experience, which is part of the Corps of Cadets, the best part of the Corps of Cadets. And I played trumpet. The best lesson, life lesson, I can honestly say, in my life, happened the very first day that I started being in the band. We were freshmen, known as Fish. They got us to the barber and shaved our heads. We got back to the dorm. We were put against the wall with blue jeans, a white t-shirt with the tags cut out backwards, so the collar came up high, and black socks and low quarter shoes. And we were lined up against the wall. And our very, very first lesson really hit me hard as a very endearing life lesson. The first thing they taught us, the very first thing they taught us, is that we only had 4 responses. One was yes, sir. The second was no, sir. The third one was a very long, I can't even pull it out, but a paragraph basically telling the individual, I don't know. And the fourth answer was, no excuse, sir. Now, with all these freshmen coming in, and you know, college was not for everybody, so these are pretty much some good grade people, ambitious people that were at the university at the time, and they had quite a bit of big heads because they were just seniors in high school a few months before. It was a humbling experience. Yes, sir, no, sir, I don't know, and no excuse. Whenever you were asked you asked why something happened or something went wrong, and you wanted to explain, if you started to, the upperclassmen would say, no. Do some push-ups. It's no excuse. Even if there was an excuse, there was no excuse. It did a couple of things. One, it bound us together as a class, as our freshman class. But more importantly, it told you how to take responsibility. And in the end, there really is no excuse to take responsibility and admit it. And that was a fantastic life lesson, not just for the time at A&M, but all through my professional and personal career, time after that. I am Ken McDaniel, Aggie BQ, class of '83. Woo!
I was born and raised here in Lampasas, and in 1975 I was a senior and was offered a scholarship at A&M to play football, and I accepted it after my mom and dad and my family visited A&M, and they were very impressed, since my father was loved animals and had a few animals ourselves. So A&M was really smart. They took him to see all the registered cattle and all the horses and everything. So he was highly impressed with the school. And as a matter of fact, they even took my mother to the horticulture division, because she said she loved plants, even though she couldn't grow a plant to save her life. She only grew cactus and stuff in our yard. And anyway, we were all impressed with A&M. And I guess some of my fondest memories was being with the team and seeing where all the people came from. They came from large cities like in Houston and everywhere, but here I was, a country boy. Matter of fact, they didn't know what Wrangler blue jeans were. And they said, man, we've never seen those kind of pants before. What are they? And I told them they were Wranglers, and they said, oh, you're from the country, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I'm definitely. So they started calling me country boy. And before long, everybody has a nickname there at A&M. If you play football, more than likely you're going to get a nickname, whether you like it or not. And so first they were calling me Big Country, and then we were scrimmaging in a practice and at practice, and we were having 101 drills, defense against the offense, and blocking. And this guy on offense was blocking against me, and he couldn't block me because he was so tall. He was about 6'5", and here I was 5'11", 6 foot. And you're supposed to drive us out of the two dummies right there in this one-on-one. And finally the coach was getting on him because I was a pretty good nose tackle. I was short to start with. And finally the coach got on him and he says, "Coach, it's like blocking a house." From that day on, my nickname was House. And so I enjoyed that nickname instead of Big Country. So, but the most impressive thing that I enjoyed the most would be A&M's traditions. Walking across campus, you would, of course, you couldn't touch the grass. It was all, military and they would tell you, get off the grass, that's sacred, and so it was enjoyable to see all the different traditions that A&M had and would keep, again, my name is Gary Milligan. I'm class of '79. Giggle.
Enjoyed A&M and all of the people there I've met and acquaintances and several classmates, and I still see some. And we all went through engineering together. No, really, once we were there and got into A&M and their engineering classes and all, I had the professor a lot of times would have us doing all kind of projects and for A&M and for himself, and we would go out and survey. I don't know how many houses and blocks I surveyed in Bryan, Texas, and then give him all the information and he signs it. That was professor, furnished the A&M equipment and all that, the instruments, and then we'd go out and stake out the properties, and we were learning things too. But
so the professors used y'all as free labor?
Yeah, that's what it was. No, they would he'd give you something, I can't remember, but that guy, he would it seemed like he gave us $20 a survey or something. But we'd go out and he furnished the stakes and stuff, but we had to go out and stake it and take the instrument and do it all, and then bring it back to him. And I don't know how they really worked that, because he was a professor and all, and I'm sure he was getting paid for it, but he paid us. So one time we were surveying some cemetery lots, and it got so interested in trying to check the cemetery out. I just remember that it was just interest to go look and see whose is what. But that was, no, most of it was work. We was getting it done and go on. See, I was in the Corps for a while, but
You were in the Corps for a while?
yeah, but see, I lost 2 brothers, and I was only surviving male, and I didn't know all this happened. So then they called me up, and I couldn't continue with my Corps unless I got permission, and I wasn't going to ask my mother to do that. I'm Bill Crawford, class of '54. Giggle.
I do have a lot of good memories. I was in the Corps at A&M in Company A1. Had Vietnam staring us in the face, so a lot of people were in the Corps. Fortunately, they quit the draft before I had to sign the contract, so I was what they call drill and ceremonies. It means I stayed in the Corps for the 4 years, but I didn't have to go in the service whenever I got through. Well, whenever A&M scored, you kissed your date. That was a tradition. But now you've got to remember, when I started A&M, there were no female students. So you found people in Austin and Dallas, and we were also kind of a sister school, brother school with Texas Women's University. And they used to have what we call the pig push. And during the pig push, like my post office box was 6252, I can still remember that. You wrote to the TW station at that same post office box, and sometimes I had some friends that got dates that way. And one of them even married the girl that he met that way. So that was, but we didn't tell them it was called the pig push. Fortunately, my parents liked me, and they bought me a car whenever I started down there, and we had a fish parking lot. It was unpaved, everybody else's was paved, but that didn't matter. And I was one of the few in my outfit, so I never knew, they knew where I kept my keys. I'd walk down there sometimes and there wouldn't be a car there. And by my junior year, I had so many parking tickets, I had to park off campus across George Bush and walk back to the dorm. But that's by the time I was a junior, I got the freshmen to go get it for me, so I didn't have to. I enjoyed that part of being an upperclassman a lot. The most important tradition, I feel like, being all serious, is silver taps. Silver taps is amazing. When a student dies, on the Monday night following it, I think it's once a month now, I think it's changed some, every light on campus was turned off. You walked from the dorms to the academic buildings and no one said a word, not a syllable. And they had a 21-gun salute up in the academic building and played taps, and you walked back home. Again, still in the dark. And I always thought that was really important, to remember the ones that weren't there. That's my favorite one. Tradition, oh gosh, there were so many traditions back then. Where do you even start? There were just so many traditions. It was just, I don't know where you'd even, bonfire was fantastic. Golly, we loved that. My outfit was in the cutting area, so we rode semi-trucks sitting between each other's legs out probably 25 miles, cold. She started cutting about the 1st of November for it. But we never did work in the stack area. I'm Giga Maggie's class of 74, beat the hell out of TU if we ever get to play them again.
I was in the Corps of Cadets. I did my 4.5 years there, considered a 5th-year senior, and then I took a military commission and spent 25 years on active duty after graduating from A&M. The Corps is called the keepers of the spirit. All the traditions and all the current traditions are rooted in the Corps. Even though the Corps is about 2,000 of the, I don't know, we're up to 50,000 undergrads now, I think, but it's a very large part of the campus personality. And as a freshman, 1984, I started A&M, and in the Corps there's ranks and privileges, and as a freshman you have no privileges. You don't even have a name. Your first name is Fish, little F. So I was Fish Cook until I became a sophomore. And but one of the best traditions was Jackie Sherrill was our head football coach, and our freshmen aren't allowed to have dessert. We call it Kush until maybe second semester. But if you beat TU, that's little T, little U, and it's that little school down in Austin where those hideous colors. If you beat TU, you get Kush. So my freshman year, we beat TU, and I think we finished the year 5-5. And have you ever seen Aggie football games today? It's like packed and crazy. Back in my time, it was not quite as packed and crazy in the old Kyle Field. So we beat TU, and so we got to eat Kush. So I was active in the Corps, and one of the largest traditions at A&M, which they don't do anymore on campus, is Aggie Bonfire. And I was a red pot, which there's 8 students in charge of the Aggie Bonfire. And when I say in charge of the Aggie Bonfire, I mean they are in charge of Aggie Bonfire. They raise money, get equipment, and they orchestrate the cut where you cut down trees, very large trees, and all our cutting was done by hand axes, not chainsaws and machinery. And then all those logs are carried out from the cutting site to a trail, and so you'd have 20, 30, 40 guys, and then we did have the female outfits. They'd carry these huge logs out and load them on trucks by hand. So that was a huge tradition at A&M, and the bonfire collapsed during construction in 1999. 12 students died, so they quit doing that on campus. But my buddy Fish Hammond, big burly guy, and it had been raining. I swore it rained every football game, and so we had our trench coats on, and he thought it'd be a good idea to steal one of those Baylor cheerleader megaphones. And he didn't coordinate with anybody. He just thought it'd be good, and then figures, just like you're kind of acclimated to do, is if your buddy does something, you jump in and you help him out, because he was in execution mode. So I was trying to talk him out of everything I'd done. So he grabs this megaphone, one of those big tall Baylor megaphones, and starts running. And this little old Baylor cheerleader had him, grabbed him by his belt on his trench coat, and she would not let go of him. And of course, he wasn't going to hit her or anything like that over a megaphone, but he was kind of dragging. And initially, if it would have been, somebody else, guys or football team, trying to stop our buddy, we would have helped out. But just watching this little old cheerleader put up a heck of a fight, and so we used our, they say the core soldier, statesman, knightly gentleman. So we did our gentleman part and just let her beat down old Fish Hammond, and he didn't get the megaphone, but she put up a heck of a fight. So there was a lot of little things like that were kind of harmless and funny, and because he would have probably got extra privileges for borrowing something from another school, because we call that good bull, something that's good bull. Bad bull is something bad. So if he would have punched her, that would have been bad bull, but still in the megaphone and getting away with it would have been good bull. Borrowing the megaphone. And I think I shared some pictures. Bevo bookstore. There's a big Bevo on top of the bookstore there. And when I was a junior Red Pot working at Bonfire. And one morning, there was this big fiberglass Bevo with his horns cut off and spray painted, and on Duncan Field where we built the bonfire. And some freshman went down to Austin, took that big, huge fiberglass Bevo off of Bevo's bookstore, put it in their truck, hauled it to the Duncan Field at A&M, and so it had axes in it, burned, and this is before. And so I don't know how it. So anyhow, you get some press in the Austin American Statesman about the Aggies stealing Bevo, and so it did get returned. It was slightly marred and no longer identified as a bull, and its horns were cut off. And then where Bevo got its name was against a game 13-0, and so that was spray painted on its side. So the freshman did it, wanted to be good bull. I don't think Austin police thought good bull or TU, but just harmless little stuff like that. I'm not sure how that would go over today, but they'd also cut down little trees off of the campus at TU and then put them on the bonfire. Small ones, and they just sneak it in there, and so every year there was some additional firewood coming from the TU campus. Steve Cook, fighting Texas class of 1988. Woo! Texas A&M.
I graduated from high school in Lampasas in 1947. It was a special time because World War II has just ended. And some of my classmates had been drafted and had returned to graduate. And a lot of us, quite a few of us from Lampasas went to A&M. It was a different situation at A&M because they could not handle the number of applications they had from these returning servicemen to take them on the campus. So they took advantage of a decommissioned Air Force base out at Bryan Field. And the year before, in 1946, the first class of freshmen went to Bryan Field and lived out there, went to school out there. Of course, Bryan Field was pretty well suited for this because it was a training field during World War II. And they had barracks to live in. They had classrooms to go to class. They had mess hall, to eat in. And so it worked out pretty good. The real difference fell because we being freshmen never went to the main campus. We didn't go to the campus to go to school or for any reason. And we did all the drilling on our own, learning how to drill and those kind of things. We didn't have upperclassmen there. And so the difference was that we weren't exposed to hazing. Now there's all kind of hazing. Most of it was verbal. Most of it was memorizing things that nobody cared about, like how many tiles in an auditorium, stuff like that. But there were some good things about it too, because you were required to know everyone in every class you went to. So you had to introduce yourself, and you had to remember, which is easier said than done. I think it was better because instead of having one roommate like I would have if I'd have been on campus, I had 9 roommates. And I had all kind of relationships with these guys. Of course, we were all men at that time, and you were required to go to unless you were a veteran, you were required to be in the Corps. And so, we were in a common area, and we enjoyed each other, being 10 of us in a room, in a barracks. It was unhandy because you had to go outside to go to the bathroom or take a shower. You had to go to a different place, but it wasn't bad, and it was a tar paper shack. It was cold in the wintertime, hot in the summertime. No air conditioning, no fan. But I kind of enjoyed it myself my freshman year, and I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it that much had I been on the main campus. The next year, as a sophomore, I went to the main campus, and we were assigned to an outfit. Mine being B battery of the Coast Artillery. That sounds like a gun that shoots from a coast out, but by that time, the Coast Artillery had turned into anti-aircraft artillery. So I was in an anti-aircraft outfit. The only way an upperclassman could get back at an upperclassman that had mistreated him, he thought, was to drown him out. Well, drowning out consisted of taking a wastebasket, which held probably 4 gallons of water, and when the offender, the upperclassman, was asleep, well, you'd go in his room, and A&M didn't believe in locks. So there was no locks on the doors, anywhere. Dorms, rooms, no lock. So anyway, you'd go in and sneak in his room with that bucket full of water and slosh it all over him. Well, you needed outside somebody to help you out a little bit, because you'd prepare a board about that long and about that deep with a notch cut in it. And your buddy outside, he stood out there, and you threw the water, ran out the door, shut it, and he slipped this board over the doorknob. So the guy inside, the two guys inside, they couldn't get out. So you had plenty of time to go back to your bed and go to bed before they could get another upperclassman to come to rescue and get them out. Well, of course, there they are with a wet bed. They had water all over the floor. It had to be mopped up. On the way to dry the mattress, was hanging out the window. So the next morning, you got to walk by and see his mattress hanging outside the window. But that was devised long before I got there. I'm William J. McLean. And I was a class of 1951. However, I delayed my graduation until January 1952. I'll try whoop. Whoop! How's that?
That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Martha Tumlinson Casper, and I'm an Aggie graduate of the class of '66. I graduated from an all-male school. It was an all-male university at the time, and so I'll tell you how I was able to go. My husband and I both graduated from Lampasas High School in the same class. I went to Baylor and he went to A&M. But we wanted to get married, but I also wanted to go to college, and I couldn't go to A&M, so we were kind of stuck there. And then during that year that I was at Baylor, A&M decided that if you were the daughter of a professor or you were married to a student, you could go to A&M as a full student and get a degree. So that solved our problem, and we got married, and I went to A&M. That's how I got there. There was a lot of opposition to women at A&M at that time by the former students. But some of them were okay with it, and we did it. I had a good experience there. I never had any problems with ever a student at all. They were all very respectful and nice to me. Of course, I was married, so I didn't have any problems with that. I had a little problem with one professor who really didn't want girls at A&M. I went to his class one time, and he sat me on the front row right in front of him, and he was a huge man, and he told a very off-color joke, and I know he did it to get rid of me, and he did get rid of me because I didn't go back to that class. But that was the only bad thing that ever happened to me there. My fondest memory, well, of course, we were married. We were there 4 years, and we lived in a tiny little apartment that used to be Army barracks. What was really fun was that my friends from Baylor, my high school friends, a lot of them were dating Aggies at the time. And so for a football game or dance or whatever, they would come down and spend the night with us in our apartment. So very often I would have 5 girls in this tiny little bedroom. We'd just cover the floor with mattresses, and that was really fun. Well, at that time, you would go to a football game and you'd dress up. I mean, you wore a nice dress and you wore heels to a football game. I know, you can't imagine that, can you? But we did, and so we would stand there, and of course you stand the whole game. We would stand during the whole game in a wool dress and heels, and it would be so hot you would almost faint, but we did it because we wanted to look cool, you know, so there you go. Yeah. There wasn't a lot for girls at that time. They created an education department when we got there, and there were about maybe 10 of us that first year. So it was a brand new department, and that was about the only thing that we could do. So we were pretty much all in the education department, which is okay. I wanted to be a teacher anyway, so that worked out okay. They didn't have classes. For instance, there was no PE for girls, and it was required. So they substituted some things for PE for me. So my PE consisted of working in a Head Start program one summer at an elementary school at A&M, and that counted as PE. My fine arts class was leather craft. So, different. Okay, it's Martha Tomlinson Kaysberg, class of '66, Gig'em.
Went to A&M because I wanted to from a very young age, but my brother preceded me and he surprised me. He went to A&M too. He was a class of '59, I was a class of '64. The other interesting thing I think about my education at A&M was the people that I was associated with there. I started out, I was a member in ROTC. At that time you had to be the first 2 years, and I was in Fighting Seagram 7. Best damn outfit on campus, but anyway. The rest of that story is I started out with 115 freshmen in a class, and that was very unusual. My freshman roommate was a gentleman from Welder, Texas. My sophomore roommate was a friend from Houston, Texas. And my junior year roommate was a friend from Dangerfield, Texas. And those three gentlemen have, and their families have been like family. Their kids, my kids, so that's association that has really lasted over the years. Now, my fourth year roommate, I was a senior, so I didn't have to have a roommate. And my fifth year roommate, I've had her for a roommate for 58 years. So I've kept pretty close to my roommates from A&M over the years, that I felt I received in terms of education at A&M. Yeah, I got the basic English and I got a lot of other benefits from it, but certainly I think the regimen, the tradition that I received, and the friendships I developed was what I consider my best education. The thing I remember really best about life in the Corps was, again, related to the traditions. Of course, silver taps and Aggie muster are the notable. And I unfortunately got to participate in silver taps several times while I was there, and once because we lost a young man in our outfit. And that was quite a moving. You marched to, at that time it was held at the academic building, and you marched silently to the academic building. There was a 21 gun salute and then taps. That was the most eerie feeling and sound, and you possibly heard it on TV. They broadcast the muster just about every year, but they would play through taps 3 occasions, and each time they would move back into the building and into the dome, and that sound. You can still hear it now. I was fortunate. I lost a high school mate in Vietnam, and I lost several Aggie buddies in Vietnam, but strangely enough, the ones that I knew about the best were killed in training missions. They weren't killed in the war itself, but in training. So that was a trying time, and I'm proud to be an Aggie. I'm proud to have gone to A&M when I did. I doubt I would even get in today. Yes, I'm Gene Bills, class of 1964, Gig'em Aggies.
and my major was psychology. However, I was a transfer student. I had gone to a couple of colleges before A&M, and actually I'm still not sure how I ended up at A&M. That always seemed like a pie in the sky kind of a dream for me, like unattainable, like that was not something that I would be able to do. But so when I was able to transfer to A&M, it was like a dream come true. And but when I was admitted, my major was officially genetics. And so my first semester there, you know, I'd already had my English, math, science kind of basics down. So when I got there, I enrolled in chemistry, 2 genetics classes, and an engineering math, which several of those had labs. And it wasn't very long before I dropped some classes to where I only had 1 class left. No, I'm sorry, 2. I got a D in one and an F in the other. So at the end of my first semester at A&M, my GPA was .667. And I thought, okay, well, there's the end of that. So I had to petition to stay, you know, and I was placed on academic probation. And I talked to the dean, which genetics was in the animal science college of animals, agriculture. And so I had to talk to the dean and basically beg, you know, for him to say, he basically said, you know, as long as you change your major, I'm good with you staying. So then I had to get permission from the other college, my proposed major, to let them, for them to let me stay as well. So, which was College of Liberal Science for psychology. So that all worked out, but I was on probation for the next semester, and so I was kind of on my best behavior and went to all my classes and all that kind of thing. It was kind of strange because my first semester, I wasn't a freshman. I'd been in college, you know, this is my 3rd year at college, so it wasn't like I was straight out of high school or anything, but it was just, I was just kind of in awe, I guess, of the whole experience at A&M my first semester. So in that sense, I was like a freshman. But after I changed majors and got in my psychology classes, I really enjoyed that, and so that went well. One of my favorite professors, it's weird because I cannot remember his name. He was the ping pong guy because he wore the exact same thing every day, and it was an outfit, and he played ping pong. Like any of his free time was spent playing ping pong. He was like the ping pong guy. So that's what I called him. I don't remember his name, but I had, it was a cognition class with him, and he was really a good professor. And so I think it was my last semester there, I took a seminar class with him, which is a small class, you know, basically sat around a table. There was like maybe 10 or 12 of us in there. And that was chaotic cognition. That was very interesting. It's just there's this feeling that you get, and until you are there, until you are an Aggie, it's just, you can't explain it, and I don't think other people can really understand it, even if you did try to explain it. I have this little plaque that says, from the inside out, you can't explain it. From the outside in, you can't understand it, which I feel is very true, because I didn't understand it fully until I actually became an Aggie. And then it really felt like, even though I didn't have a whole bunch of friends, you're a big family. There were 40,000 students when I was there. We were a family, you know. Walking around campus, you know, howdy, everybody, it gives me goosebumps thinking about that. And every time I hear the war hymn, I get goosebumps. And the Aggie Band is just awesome. I can't explain how awesome it makes me feel, you know, to be a part of that. And actually, my career as a librarian kind of started because I got a job because I had graduated from A&M. I had applied for a library technician job at the at the Fort Hood Library, but it was a contract through Central Texas College. And so I went to interview with the project manager, and he was an Aggie. And of course I had no library experience at that point, but he was willing to give me a chance, and I truly believe, because I don't think I was that impressive in the interview, I truly believe that a lot of it was because I was an Aggie, that I got that shot at that job. And 6 months into that job was when I decided I wanted to go into library science. Being an Aggie really helped me get started in my career, which is not even really psychology, but I mean, I think psychology is relevant to any field. You're dealing with people, so. My name is Shanda Subia, class of 96. Woo!
My dad went to A&M. He was in a class of 44. He was drafted 3 months before he would have graduated and been commissioned a lieutenant in the Army, so he got to go to basic training and then officer candidate school. And after the war, he got out of the service in 46, finished school at A&M, and then decided to go back in the Army. I'm sure any older folks hearing this this recording will have remembered Coach Fowler. Sam Fowler was a coach here in Lampasas before World War II. Then he entered the service and served in World War II, and then came back and was the head coach and athletic director here for a long time. And then retired from being the athletic coach or the athletic director and the football coach, and just taught math. And so even though my father graduated from college, his grandmother was a 2-year, went to college for 2 years, which is all back in her day you had to do to be a teacher, and she taught for a while. And we had advisors in high school, etc. When I went to the preschool orientation at A&M, one of the questions they asked when we were filling out forms was, what is your major going to be? I had no clue what they were talking about. Finally, one guy was braver than me, raised his hand, and he said, I don't understand. And they said, well, it's what you're primarily going to take in college. It's what you're going to be when you get out of college. And he stood there like this. And they finally said, well, what did you like in high school? Well, I like Sam Fowler. So I wrote math. With all the harassment that freshmen and the Corps cadets went through at A&M, and taking 2 4-hour science classes that I never had taken before, and taking analytic geometry and calculus that I hadn't had in high school, I would have flunked out these days, but they let me stay another semester, and I changed my major to business and did okay after that. So thank you, Sam Fowler. And when I was a freshman, I was dating a lady from Lampasas who was going to Southwestern University in Georgetown, so I went there a few times in the rare times that freshmen had a day or a weekend off, or I would come home, and a lot of that was hitchhiking. And got a ride to little town about 25 miles west of College Station. And then I was out on the side of the road doing this. A nice gentleman in a pickup pulled over and let me get in. Said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Lampasas. He said, okay, hop in. He went about 5 miles, turned into his farm, and said, you need to get out here. So it was about dark. I was standing out on the side of the road in a Corps Cadet's uniform in the middle of nowhere. And after a while, this black, I thought, big car pulled over, and the guy said, hop in. and it was a hearse with a dead body in the back. And he carried me to where the road from down south runs into Fort Hood, and said, "I'm going into Fort Hood, you need to hop out here." And so now I'm standing out in front of Fort Hood in an A&M Corps Cadets uniform about 8:30 or 9 at night doing this. And finally this car pulled over, and it was, there were 3 guys, 3 soldiers in it, and they said, "Well, where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to Lampasas." And they said, "Okay, hop in." And it turned out they were Canadians who had joined the American Army, which was fairly common in those days. And they were just out driving around, and they hadn't been to the big town of Lampasas, so they wanted to come take a look at it, so they brought me home. Well, muster it's basically a tribute to Aggies who have passed away during the last year. And what you do is you go to the muster, and there's a list of all the people who attended A&M who passed away in the last 12 months. And you go through and select the ones that you knew. And then when everybody is in attendance, when everybody's there, they start, and I don't know, maybe they do it alphabetically by the people who are going to speak or whatever. But anyway, they start calling the roll of the people who passed, and if you signed up for somebody, you say "here." And that way it is a tribute to the people who have passed away by saying, yes, you're still here, at least in our minds. And then when they announce a name that nobody signed up for, the group says "here" in unison. So muster is a tribute. And then we usually try to get together another time and have fun. My name is Tom Terry, or Thomas Keith Terry. I'm in the class of 71 at A&M. Hoo-ah!
I'm class of 63 at A&M, although I had changed majors and I got out in 1964. Back then the semesters ended probably about 10 days after the Christmas holidays. And I would put off a lot of term papers and all that, thinking that I would do them during the holidays, and invariably I would procrastinate, and then I'd get back down there, and I was up to 3 or 4 every morning, and then having to go. You didn't have any choice. You marched to breakfast and you marched to all the meals, and but those were my worst memories. My best memories are the camaraderie that I had, and the friendship, and the one of the main things I gained by going to A&M is learning how to work with people from both ends. The bottom end is the follower, and then it's the leader, and it paid off. And my time management skills, I really improved those, and it's been a blessing to me my whole life. I was in a Ross Volunteer drill team, and we got to lead the King Rex Parade at Mardi Gras in New Orleans. And I'd saved up $30 to go down there. We were going to be down there about 4 days. And the others were about the same shape. And the first night it was all gone. It was Pat O'Brien's and too many hurricanes, but those were good times. And things that were funny to us, like we would play hall hockey and have a can of shoe polish and brooms, and be about, and the hallways were not very wide, maybe 6 foot wide, and it was like having a football game with no pads on. I mean, we did all kinds of weird stuff for entertainment, and trying to think of anything. Oh, another thing that was amusing to me that wouldn't be to about anybody else, but we went down there, and of course girls couldn't come to school, so all of us, most of us went down there, had girlfriends. Well, they all went off to the University of Texas or TCU or San Marcos or wherever they went. And it wasn't too long that they lost interest in us because we weren't around. And they would send letters, Dear John letters is what they called them back then. And the fella that got a Dear John letter, if we found out about it, we would have them go in the restroom. Of course, the restroom was just a line of urinals and commodes in there, and we set them up. Would have a little platform and put a chair up there, and then the letter would be read, and we'd have a metal trash can, and the poor guy that got the letter had to burn the letter and drop it in the trash can, and then we would have a 21 crapper salute. So 21 commodes would be flushed, and then we would hum taps, and then the poor devil would go back and cry in his room, I guess. But you didn't want anybody to find out you'd gotten a Dear John letter. Well, I'm James Buford Briggs, and I graduated from Texas A&M. I'm class of '63 at Texas A&M, and I graduated in '64, and I'm a proud Aggie, and I say, giggle, Aggies. Yeah.
I graduated actually in 2009. I wanted to take a victory lap. Spent the first 4 years in the Corps, so I decided I needed 1 year to see how the other side of the campus was living. Was the first blind person in the Corps. I remember going up to Lieutenant General Van Alstyne at new student orientation and saying I wanted to join the Corps. Did he think that was possible? And to his credit, he stood there, then he said, well, if you want to try, I don't mind trying. And so we tried it and had some interesting things happen that aren't normal for cadets, but we got through them all, and it was a really enjoyable, awesome experience. The most fun memory is probably one night, I would say it was my senior year most likely, was coming back late from Northgate, and a couple of our fish had decided it was time to play a prank on the blind guy. And I guess they thought I was just going to happily get jumped in the hallway and get duct taped to a chair, but it didn't quite turn out as they were expecting. They ended up duct taped to the chair, not me, and so I went to bed. But that was probably one of the funniest moments, just because no one had ever really pulled a prank like that on me per se before. But we had a good time with it. They had fun, I had fun, and nobody got hurt, so that was good. I can remember junior year, so you're on the field during midnight yells, and usually we would come back from Northgate before heading to midnight yell, and so we were down there doing what you do on the field, and someone kept jabbing me. They would jab my arm, and I would kind of ignore them, because some of my buddies had started doing that. I guess it was entertaining to them. But I was ignoring them, kept jabbing me. Lost my patience, turned and punched the person that was jabbing me, and I hear this super big bass, low, ooh! And I thought, that didn't sound like any of my buddies. And then everyone around me was like, oh my God! Well, that was the night that I punched a 3-star general in the stomach, the commandant of the cadet corps. He was startled, to say the least. I was absolutely mortified. And after the fact, he laughed and was like, I wanted to get angry. And then I thought to myself, well, it's what I get, John, for not telling the blind person who's poking him. So that was probably one of my funnier memories of being blind in the core, of things that you would never dream of happening in your life. Loved bonfire. Like at that point, it was no longer on campus, but you know, the Student Bonfire Association, I assume they still do it. I haven't looked this year, but they've, ever since the collapse happened, you know, they've been having them off campus, and I don't know, that was enjoyable. I can remember getting instructed by an upperclassman at Bonfire that a blind person can certainly not use an axe. And so we had to go over that just because you can't see doesn't mean you can't swing an axe. Got all my fingers still, and so that was no big deal. But I don't know, I really enjoyed that. It was a neat experience, you know, because I grew up, what am I, third generation Aggie? And so, I mean, I grew up I can remember as like a 5-year-old, you know, coming to campus for bonfires and like getting as close as possible to the stack without, you know, melting your skin off. And my mom being like, Douglas, you know, you get them back. And we're like, no, we want to get closer. You know, I don't know. I just always loved bonfire and march-ins, I would say. Those are probably the two most exciting for me. Shockingly, most of mine are tied to blindness, I guess, but I can remember during Hell Week, so the first week that you're there as a fish, you know, the rest of your friends are still at home, I guess, partying, having a good time in the summer, and here you are getting screamed at. But we were sitting there at Duncan, and it was like the first day, the first dinner, and I guess for people that haven't experienced how that works for fish, it's a chaotic hurricane of running, scrambling, getting at tables. Somehow, I got stuck by myself at a table with the first sergeant, the guidon bearer, and his buddy, and it had only been like 6 hours, so I didn't know anybody's voice. You know, so the first part of mealtime is you have to greet who's at the table. You know, howdy, Mr. So-and-so, sir. Howdy, Mr. So-and-so, sir. You know, type thing. So I'm sitting there going, why is nobody greeting these people? You know, because you know, and I waiting, and the first sergeant was like, you gonna greet us or what? And I'm going, why is no one greeting these people? And he's like, Fish Davis, are you gonna greet us or what? And I'm sitting there going, I don't know who you are. And I said something snarky like, how am I supposed to greet you? I can't see you. And so he grabs me and throws me up against the wall, and he's screaming at me, spit flying everywhere, and I'm sitting there going, I don't have a clue. So we're screaming at each other back and forth, and I finally was like, do you not realize I can't see? I don't have a clue who you are. And he's like, ugh. Oh yeah, you know, as you were, get back to your seat. And I'm going, oh my God. But that was my like entrance to, because I mean, it's so, everything is different. You know, from the upperclassmen perspective, your buddies as well as you, everything is so visual based. If you don't recognize their face, you can see their name tag. Well, it takes a long time to learn like 62 people's voices. I mean, I would say it probably took me at least 3 weeks to know all the, you know, the different sounds of people's voices. But that was probably the very first shocking, like, oh, this is going to be an interesting challenge. That was, I would say, the other story that sticks out bright as day still. It would probably be, you know, final review, senior year. I don't know. It just, my wife likes to tease me that it makes me emotional. But it was just that act of that final marching through, the cheering. It's just, I don't know. Marching into Kyle Field is probably one of the craziest things that I've ever experienced this just sounds so awesome. You know, 80, 90, 100,000 people screaming. I don't know. I love it. I love going to marching still today. And we haven't taken our new son, who's 6 weeks old yet, but our daughter, I mean, ever since she was like 1, we've gone almost annually, and she loves standing there with the march-ins, the band's marching through, people are cheering. It's just neat. All right, so it's Zach Davis, proudest member of the class of 2008. Woo! There you go.
I majored in business management and got a business degree. We had a situation, and I don't remember the year, but a group of Aggies kidnapped, really is a better word, all the Southwest Conference mascots, even Bevo, the Longhorn. Now, I remember one day I was asleep and I heard a big ruckus outside the dorm, and I was, of course, in the core dorm, and I looked out the window, and down there, tied up to a bugle stand, was the SMU pony, and it had the little SMU blanket on it, and everybody was hooping and hollering and raising Cain. And I've since found out that Rice didn't have a real owl. They had a paper mache owl. And so they somehow got access to this building where the paper mache owl was, and they brought the paper mache owl back to College Station. So that's about all I know about the conference mascot caper, but it did happen. There have been several articles written about it in Aggie magazines, and so it's well documented. There wasn't much to do in College Station. We would go to, for example, Huntsville, and just stand at the bottom floor of the girls' dorm, and the girls would come walking down the stairs, and we'd say, "You want to go to a dance?" And they'd say yes or no, and we would take them to a dance. So we did that at Baylor to go to football games too. We'd just go in our uniform to the girls' dorm at Baylor, and they would come walking down the stairs, and we'd ask them if they wanted to go to the football game. Yeah, so we'd go to the football game, have a date for the game. Oh yeah, we did a lot of that. It wasn't really smoke bombs. We used canisters of Babo. They'd be like a can of Comet cleaner, and you cut a little X in them and stick a cherry bomb down in there. Yes, a cherry bomb. And you would light it and throw it in the room. Then you close the door, and if you put a baseball bat between the door handle and the door jamb, they couldn't open the door. And they would hear psh, and they'd try to get out, and boom, and Comet Babo cleaner would dust the room off. You'd also do that when you did were called drowned outs, and you'd get garbage cans, trash cans of water, and we'd all line up outside this guy's room, and we'd throw the door open and then go in and throw water on this guy in his bed, in his bunk, and then run out and put the baseball bat in there before he could chase us down, catch us. Because if we got caught, which we got punished anyway, push-ups, we'd have to run, we'd have to do menial tasks. They would make us sit and hold up shower shoes like that against the wall. I don't know if you've ever held up a pair of shower shoes like that for about 10 minutes. They get heavy, very heavy. So that was punishment type things for drowning out. We would also take them out in their underwear into the quadrangle, tie them up, run off, leave them tied up out there. We did that a few times. I'm Lee Culver, class of 1966. Gig 'em.
Hi, I'm Ethan Rogers, and this is...
I'm Mariah Perel, and we're both the class of 2025.
We, thanks to the museum and this wonderful exhibit, we were able to interview some former Aggies, edit it, and give it to you guys to watch. And we enjoyed it very much so. One thing I thought was really cool about all the stories was how they were in the Corps, a lot of them. And I also think it's really cool is I don't have to be in the Corps. I don't want to be in the Corps. I can't be mean enough anymore to be in the Corps. And a lot of their stories had to do with engineering, which is good because I want to go to school for engineering, but I also want to minor in film and audio production. And as you can tell with this video, I've done a little bit of it. So I'm hoping when I go for it as my minor, I'm not just like a fresh fish and don't know what I'm doing. But could be wrong, could be totally wrong.
What I really liked about A&M was their traditions that the Corps had, and even the people who weren't in the Corps. It seemed like it brought them together as a community, as a family, and even as Aggies would graduate, they would still have a bond and a connection just by seeing a sticker on the car or the A&M ring. They were there for each other, and I feel like that connection is something that's very strong and very appealing to me. And what I plan on going there for is environmental engineering or environmental science and minoring in film and audio. I feel like that's something I can go far into, and if I want, it could even bring up a career in documenting environmental problems that I want to bring forth.
Well, that's great. This is from the future class of 2025. Woo!